Hey, how's it going, guys? Today I want to go over Limbo, with his Prime coming out soon, and Stasis getting a rework to make it more user-friendly without annoying your teammates. I think it's a great time for people to pick up, or at least get a better understanding of how to play Limbo, and the way his abilities work. As a frame, Limbo's probably one of, if not the most hated frame in the game, and that's mostly just because of the way Limbo's abilities affect your teammates, and not understanding the basics of how those abilities work can be very frustrating and prevent your team from using their abilities the way that they want to. So for this video, I'm going to start by going over the basic functions of his abilities. I'm going to show you a couple Limbo builds that I use, and then I'll show you some gameplay with my own commentary and thoughts about the frame. So to start, I'd like to go over a unique ability that is at the core of Limbo, and that is the Rift Plane. The Rift Plane is an alternate dimension that Limbo can create with his abilities. Allies or enemies that are in the plane cannot be affected by allies or enemies that are not in the plane. So to interact with something, you need to be in the same plane of existence as that thing. To demonstrate this, I'm going to go over Limbo's one ability called Banish. Limbo's first ability, Banish, gives him the power to put both enemies and allies inside of his Rift Plane. Once an object has entered the Rift Plane, you can no longer damage it or interact with it until you are on the Rift Plane yourself. So as you can see here, by entering the Rift Plane using Limbo's role, I am now able to re-banish the enemies, which puts them back on the normal plane of existence. Once we are on the same plane, I can then damage them. And if for whatever reason either Limbo or the enemies change planes, you can no longer interact with them. Here I pause the enemy AI to better display this. An important note about this ability is it also affects your teammates and can be very frustrating for them by preventing them from damaging the enemies. While using this ability, always be mindful of your teammates. Now in order to better explain Limbo's 2, I'm going to start by going over his 4, called Cataclysm. This ability creates what is essentially a large rift bubble where you are currently aiming. The bubble's range and duration can be affected by mods as well as its strength. This ability is most commonly used to defend targets in modes like Mobile Defense and Kuva Survival. You can also use it to deal respectable but not high scaling damage to enemies. And as the bubble is active, it is constantly shrinking, which can also be affected by your duration and range. Now that we have an understanding of his 4, I'm going to talk about Limbo's 2. Stasis is an ability that freezes time while in the Rift Plane. Currently, this affects all enemies in the Rift, as well as allies' projectiles while in the Rift. However, DE just released a developer workshop where they proposed reducing Stasis's duration by half and having it only affect enemies, which would be a huge quality of life buff. I don't think this will significantly change Limbo's playstyle, but if it does, then I might make another video going over it, or simply add more information to the description of this video. But the reason Stasis is so good is because it can literally freeze enemies in place, allowing you to remain immune to damage while stopping them in their tracks. It's for this reason that most players combo it with Cataclysm in order to defend defense targets. One important note is that if 300 projectiles travel through the rift while Stasis is active, Stasis is automatically deactivated, which as you can see, hurts. And lastly, his third ability, Rift Surge, is probably the least useful of the bunch. Not that it's inherently bad, it just doesn't see much use in normal gameplay. When you cast this ability on enemies in the rift, it applies a coil-looking effect on them. This effect allows you to banish the enemies while keeping them inside the rift, which can extend the duration of them being frozen in stasis. Also, when triggered by banish, nearby enemies will be taken into the rift, helping Limbo spread his rift without leaving the rift plane himself. The last thing I want to go over is Limbo's roll. This is an ability unique to Limbo, where instead of a roll, he transfers into the rift plane, leaving behind a rift tear that both he and allies can use to enter the plane. And to exit it, Limbo or his allies simply need to use their roll key again. For me, this is shift, but it might be different for you depending on your keybinds or platform. But hopefully this has given you a good idea of how Limbo's abilities work if you weren't familiar with them before. And now I'm going to go over my builds. I'll start out by going over my mobile defense build. This is the build I use the most as Limbo makes mobile defense essentially a joke. Here I'm going for as much duration as I can get with the minimum range. I want low range because I don't want it to interfere with my teammates' playstyles, and having as low range as possible makes that much easier on them. As you can see here, I am running Augur Reach, and that's because at minimum range I think the Cataclysm bubble gets a little too small for me. and Auger Reach keeps it at a nice range without disrupting my teammates too much. Other than that, I have Efficiency, Natural Talent for cast speed, and Vitality for survivability. My aura is Corrosive Projection. I'm using this simply because Corrosive Projection is basically the best aura, but you can certainly use whatever you have. And as you can see, I have Peculiar Bloom, but you can swap this out for any other Exilus mod. I'd recommend Speed Drift for the cast speed. Other than that, I have Arcane Energize and Arcane Guardian to help with survivability and energy, but that's pretty much it. Overall, the basic principle of this is just get high duration, low range, and efficiency. Now, the other Limbo build I've named Bada Boom, and I use this for Syndicate missions. Limbo is easily the best frame for Syndicate missions. And that's because his Cataclysm can destroy basically all the loot containers on the map, making it very easy to find the medallions during the missions. If you're hunting medallions, I'd really recommend going for a Limbo build like this. I basically just have maximum range with efficiency and some power strength. I've chosen Transient Fortitude here in addition to Fleeting Expertise because they both reduce ability duration. By having such a low duration, I can cast Cataclysm and have it expire almost immediately. This both does a good amount of damage to medium level enemies and prevents allies from being caught in your Cataclysm for too long. I'm also using Natural Talent for the cast speed, and then I have Loot Detector and Thief's Wit for additional loot range. Instead of Thief's Wit, you could also use Speed Drift or Cunning Drift, but right now I'm using this. And again, I have Arcane Guardian and Arcane Energize as my arcanes. But that does it for the build section. I'm going to be showing some gameplay of the different mission types that I run Limbo on, and I'll do a little bit of commentary over it with my thoughts. Alright, so first up, let's look at the Syndicate mission with the big Cataclysm build. I think this is one of the more interesting Limbo builds, and you'll definitely see how effective it is at destroying containers all over the map. And at this level, I think these are about level 20 enemies. The Cataclysm kills them in one hit, which is more than enough. This isn't really the best map to show this off on, but it was a capture mission. It was real easy, and I thought it would be a decent showcase. This is also good for getting like Iatan stars or other things from containers, and Iatan sculptures if they're on the map. You'll be able to see them pretty easily because they won't disappear after you cast Cataclysm. But basically, as soon as you cast it, you just run around and pick up all the loot. Anything that is not picked up is going to be a sculpture or a medallion. And like I said, like the big open maps are not the best Syndicate missions. It's better to have closed, tight spaces. But this is just what I had, so I went in a really roundabout way on this mission. More straightforward missions are easier for this. And after I got the capture target, there was a 3 medallion room, which was quite nice. These rooms are really good for medallions. You'll see them a lot in the Corpus tiles. But I think that's a pretty good look at what a mission with the Limbo build looks like. Did take me about 5 minutes, which I could have probably shaved down, but I got 5 of the medallions, which is pretty decent. And if you're playing with more people, you know, they'll be looking for them as well, which will increase the number you get. Or you could spend more time in the mission, but I just wanted to show you guys this quickly. The next mission I queued up for was a public Kuva survival with just some random people. And I think you probably won't need to see the whole gameplay. I'll show a little bit of what I think is interesting from this. Limbo makes guarding the Kuva siphon nodes a joke. All you have to do is cast your 4 and your 2 stasis, and then you can leave it alone with as much duration as this build has. And this is just the mobile defense build that I showed earlier. So while your Cataclysm's up, guarding the point, you can just run around and kill things with your teammates. Or I guess you can sit in your Cataclysm if you're just a lazy-ass Limbo. But hopefully you're not. And with Limbo, the only thing you need to worry about in Kuva survival is how much oxygen you have remaining. So having something like a Necros, and then maybe like a high DPS build, maybe Saren, will help you stay a lot longer. I hope by this point you guys understand how this works. It's the same thing for mobile defense, although if you run into something with nullifiers like the Void or a Corpus tile, then you're going to have to pay attention to the nullifier bubbles so they don't destroy your cataclysm. And one last thing I forgot to go over that's kind of useful is that you can revive your teammates and your allies while you're in your rift, which is quite nice. There are a lot of little tricks like that on Limbo, and I can't go over all of them in one video, so I hope you guys check out the wiki links that I'll leave in the description. But that's going to do it for this video, so I hope you guys learned something, and if you did, please do leave a like and subscribe for future content.